Hello, everybody. Hello, Monday Morning Jumpstarters. Ted, hello, how are you?
Good morning. I'm well.
This is, I think today's going to be one that we've kind of talked about a lot, but I think a little bit of a different frame of mind. It's near the start of the year, but there's only enough time where it can be already feel defeating if, oh, I was going to go to gym every day and now I'm not going to gym. And so I might as well just throw in the bag and give it all up and, just scrap everything. It all goes out together. But I'll say one of my favorite quotes is from Pema, Chodron, and she said, every breath is a chance for a fresh start, which I think you and I both believe that any time can be a fresh start. So feelings on that, and then we can get into some goal stuff.
Yeah, I love that quote. I've never heard that quote, but I love that quote. It quickly sparked the one that I often use, which is widely used, but it just sits heavy in my heart, which is today is the first day of the rest of your life. Which is, I think, this idea of goals, talking about goals in the beginning of the year, I almost feel if I'm shooting you straight, I almost feel cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's talking about goals in the beginning of the year, but here's my truth around it. I think we always got to be talking about goals. I think it's really hard to get good at creating goals consistently, creating goals that are meaningful, creating goals that are SMART, to use that acronym. Maybe we go through that a little bit. But you're right. I would actually just challenge our listeners today to be thinking about, are you the person that's really concentrating on goals in the beginning of the year, or has it really become habitual for you? Like when the time is right to just create a goal, you understand that you have this outcome that you want, whether it's a very practical outcome, business, revenue, etc., or an outcome of being, like you want to be a certain way. Like, are you waking up on any random day and understanding that the quickest way to get there is to come up with some very focused goals and then to track them, versus being put in the big pot of people that really pay attention to goals in the beginning of the year and only in the beginning of the year. And then to your point, oftentimes fall off. I think all the research says, I think I actually just read something from our president, Rebecca Matter, and she put out a percent, but I don't remember what the percent was, but a certain amount of people fall off by the end of January or something like that. And the percentage is high.
And I didn't plan to talk about this or say this, but your quote also sparked something that I've learned in the last year. I think something that's not spoken about, before you decide on a goal or where you're going, you very often have to decide on what you're no longer doing as well, right? Like, I feel like when you're like, I no longer can stand for this and I no longer want to be this, now I'm going to decide to be that. But that first part often has to come first before you can look at the goals, because without changing that, the goals, it's the same person trying to accomplish the goals that was trying to do the opposite behavior before,
It's very true. It's very true. And not understanding that the other thing that I think is important when we're talking about goals is, I always say, like, think about the outcomes first. Because a lot of times people just go through the exercise. And I'm not saying it's a bad exercise to sit down, put pen to paper, which is just a very important part of creating goals, actually putting them down on paper. A lot of research around that, by the way. But this idea that, well, start with pen to paper about what kind of things do you want to achieve. Those are not necessarily goals. They're just saying, hey, I want to do X. For example, easy, because we're sitting here talking about people becoming entrepreneurs or whatever. Let's just say you wanted to make $5,000 a month. Mm-hmm. To me, as a coach, that's not the goal that we're ever going to talk about. That's an outcome, right? It's not a goal from my lens, right? What I'd want to talk about are the things that are going to lead you to 5K. So what are you going to do on social media? What are you going to do as far as your writing activity every day? What channels of business are you going to try to land, and what are the goals around those things? And now we're on to something. The mistake I think people make is those goals are, I want to make $5,000 a month. I want to lose 20 pounds. To me, as a coach, we're never going to talk about those goals. And that's the goals that the majority of people, from my lens, they actually come up with in the beginning of the year. They don't drive activity. They don't drive mindset, right? So I think those, actually, I'm sitting here writing these things down. Yeah. I think those are outcomes. So one of the things that I would challenge everybody to do today is to go, are my goals like the high-arching outcome, and then I need to create goals underneath of them? Because that's what's going to drive, and then get hyper focused on those more granular goals that are going to lead you to the high-arching goal that I would call an outcome.
It's almost like if you had to go to your boss and say, I want a $10,000 raise right now today. Well, they're going to say, what have you done or what are you doing to get that raise, right? So you have to do those things and find those actions of how you're raising the bar for yourself in order to get that outcome of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I'll give you an example. This is a real example in our house. And we're a relatively healthy home, but like you can imagine, like the last month or two, we've completely fallen off the rocker, right? So the outcome is not, or the goal is not, we're going to lose weight or we're going to do anything. There's one thing that Angel, my wife, and I are focused on right now, and that is, and it's a simple activity. We sit down for 10 minutes and we plan out our meals for the week. It's game changing. Mm-hmm. That 10-minute sit and saying, all right, here's 5 things that we could cook at home that would be relatively healthy. And then you hit the grocery store. But that activity of sitting down for 10 minutes, which we had not had a habit around for months. So we're getting to the grocery store, buying 1 or 2 meals, and then the rest of the week we're ad hocing it, which unfortunately leads to what? Takeout or whatever, versus the one thing, the high-arching outcome, the goal is healthier, possibly lose some weight, etc. But that one thing about just sitting down for 10 minutes on Sunday, which is when we do it, and saying, hey, what are the 4 or 5 meals that we're going to eat at home? The boys get them bought in, etc. That's what I'm looking for from people, really to think through.
And another thing that creates, I think so often when we remove something that's from just floating on our heads and put it, like you said, on paper, but also plan it out, it removes so much of the stress and it makes it seem so much more doable and it makes you take so much more action. Because how stressful can it be on that Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. when you're like, oh no, I need to plan a dinner. What are we going to do? We don't have anything. I'm too worried about it. I'm just going to go to McDonald's. You know, it's like that whole thing versus if you just sat down on Sunday and we're like, oh, we're going to make spaghetti bolognese. Here are all the ingredients. At the end of the day, yes, I have to cook, but there's no stress around that thing.
Yeah.
And I think so often when any goal or anything that we want to accomplish just lives in our head, and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. There's no ways. This is just impossible. I can't do it. Versus like actually documenting and finding ways to that outcome, to use your word. I think it's also a stress alleviator and it helps you create your own path, which we're big on around here.
It's huge. The stress reliever, you mentioned it earlier, that the stress is what keeps people from achieving goals, because then they go, this is far too overwhelming. Or like you said, we're like 2 or 3 weeks into the new year. So they made these goals the latter part of December. They don't see the movement that they were hoping to see towards this high-arching outcome. And so they go, I ain't doing this. And they just kind of fall off the wagon. And that's not what we want people to do. We want people focused on those SMART goals. And so for people that don't remember the whole acronym, again, here's what I'm going to say about SMART. There many people use the SMART acronym, right? This is nothing. We're not presenting people anything that's not out there and hasn't been out there for many years. Now, here's what I'd say about it. The question is, do people use it effectively? So it's one of those things that easily understood, not so easily applied. And that's the main message that I want to get to people here, because the acronym itself, people go, oh yeah, I've heard that before. It's good. I want you to just write down some goals and then bring in the SMART acronym and see how you're doing on it. That's what I'd want people to do, because most people don't do very well on it. So the SMART acronym is specific, right? Which is sometimes the examples that we use, losing weight, not a specific goal, right? I want to make more money, not a specific goal. Even a 6-figure salary, that's not specific, because I don't know what you mean by six figures. It means 600,000, or it could be in 100,000. Like I don't know what that means. So that's one. Measurable, right? Again, very aligned with specific. If you can't measure it, how are you going to track it, right? So you want to find ways to measure a goal. Sometimes the elusive goals, like you say, I want to read more books. How many books do you want to read a month? And then just track what you're doing. Attainable is the A. This one I always I always get big on this one because I think sometimes, and this is going back to what you brought up, people falling off the wagon. I think it's most of the time it's because they've put out this unattainable goal. Mm-hmm. And so there's two sides to this coin that I want to address. There's one that I think sometimes people overshoot. They don't see the movement towards the goal. They can't see the horizon. And then they go, I'm off the wagon. I'm not doing this. I can't do it. So really try to make your goals attainable. Now there's the flip side of that coin that probably has hindered me more in my career, more than the overachieving goals, which is the fear of creating a stretch goal, right? Because, well, I'm just going to downshoot it because I don't want to experience failure or experience not reaching that goal. Therefore, I'm going to undervalue myself. I'm going to undershoot what I could possibly achieve. So you got to find that balance between not overshooting something, but also be willing to stretch yourself to become the best version of yourself, to maximize your earning potential. Because the flip side of the attainable part is that the fear. So I just want people to grab that. The R is recorded. So this is just written down, folks. We've already talked about taking pen to paper and putting it somewhere where you're going to be reminded of that, right? Mm-hmm. I often say you can put a Post-it note, you can put these different things around your house. But there's a lot of research around the people that wrote the goals are the ones that see them come to fruition. And then the last one is T, time frame, which this is a big one too. The idea of setting goals with certain time frames so you can better measure them. So now we're bringing the M back into it. But just saying you want to lose a certain amount of weight, not specific, there's no time frame on it, versus now we're bringing in SMART and we go, hey, I want to lose 2 pounds by the end of January. So on January 31st, I want to be able to measure, did I lose my 2 pounds? So all those things. And the reason I say, sometimes I bring up SMART and I'm like, I kind of feel cliche bringing it up because it's so widely used. I would just challenge people to just randomly write down some goals and then bring in the SMART acronym, write that at the top of the page and just kind of say, how'd I do? Is this SMART or is there room for me to make it smarter, underneath the use of the acronym?
And I don't know if you even remember this, Ted, but you did this exercise with the AWAI team. I think it was in October. And I hit my December goal.
There you go. There you go.
Because I normally don't even record. I'm not very good at recording such short time frame goals. And it was such I don't want to say game changer, but it was great to 3 months be able to accomplish something, without, like what you say, without making it too attainable, but like a good, stretch myself a little bit, but it felt really good. So yeah, just a little, if I can do it, you can do it.
That's right.
Okay. So I think homework today is very clear. Write down some goals, look at them through the SMART lens. And next week, we're going to come back to talk about something we love to talk about, and that is like slowing down and reflection when it comes to these goals. And we will see everybody there.
See you. Thanks. Have a good week.